Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Welcome back. Now, we've had a lot of stories. We covered a lot of them yesterday about what's happening with the TSA all over the country. And of course, it's kind of focused in Chicago, but it's not exclusive to Chicago. It's happening all over the country at all the major airports. The common problem is the TSA. And it's not just airport travel. It's going to metastasize from there because this is the Transportation Security Agency, not just the Airplane Security Agency. I wanted to talk to someone who contacted us and said, hey, I just flew from Illinois a couple of months ago to Mexico, and there's interesting contrast between security in America and security in Mexico. I can tell you some things about it. So now we're going to talk to David Dalka with Fearless Revival. Welcome, David.
It's a pleasure to be with you, David Knight.
Tell us a little bit about, now you flew out of Chicago. Did you see the massive lines that everybody is talking about?
I flew on an international flight late at night, so I didn't see any of the lines 3 weeks ago when I started this trip.
Okay, yeah, this is something that's just started recently. I guess really they're kind of gearing up for the summer vacation. I did see something flying out of Austin going to Oregon that I mentioned about how it was early morning and they had only a third of the lanes opened up that they had there, and most of the employees were standing around talking to each other. And at that time of the day, it was almost all business travelers, and everybody was going, what are they doing? Why won't they? But of course, nobody would engage them, because if you do that, you know what happens at the DMV. You know what's going to happen at the TSA. But tell us about your experience and what you saw in Mexico.
Yeah, I was in Mexico for a travel conference, so I had the experience of flying through several different airports and going to different cities over the week I was there. And during that time, I went to 3 different airports. And each time that I went through the security line in those 3 airports in Mexico, the wait time to go through the line was 5 minutes or less.
Yeah, well, you know, I can say that 10 years ago, when we flew to China, I remember as we were getting ready to go back to the United States, there were announcements in the airport at Hong Kong. They told everybody, if you're going to the United States, you need to get here extra early, and they had extra process and procedure. That he said, there were all these announcements about people who were traveling to the United States. Nobody else was going through these kind of security procedures that they were having all of us go through. And we had just adopted my daughter, and she did not speak any English, so my wife went out and got a bunch of toys at the toy market. They had a toy market there, had a bag filled with toys, and as they were going in, the security went through it, took every one of those toys and threw them away in front of my wife, in front of my daughter, and so we didn't have anything to help her with the journey. And I looked at this as we're going through these procedures and thinking, am I really doing the right thing bringing this girl out of China to America? Maybe America is worse than China. Tell us what the procedures were like in Mexico.
You know, even though there wasn't a common language, there was a friendly vibe about the people as they approached you, and you went through the line very quickly. The only challenge I had one time was, one time I forgot to take my belt off, and they looked at that, but then they're just like, unbuckle it, and then they looked at the other side, and it was boom. It didn't take 15 minutes. It took 15 seconds to correct this small problem.
Did they have you take off your belt buckle, empty your pockets, take off your shoes, strip down your underwear?
All the basic stuff about emptying your pockets. I just forgot to take the belt off the one time, but the rest of it was, it was smooth, it was quick, it was easy, and there was never any lines. It was staffed properly. It was staffed towards creating a good customer experience, which is what it should be.
Well, but it even goes beyond that. I got to ask you this. Did they give you any clowns and rainbow-colored ponies to pet?
No, I saw that.
Because that's, David, that's good customer service. That's what we're being told now. That's the response to the TSA and the various airports. They literally are giving people service ponies that they can pet and clowns to entertain them, rather than addressing the ridiculous and ineffective procedures. Because we had a lot of security experts tell us, look, if you're concerned about terrorist attacks, you don't bunch people up at the entrance to the airport. You don't do all these things that you're doing in terms of creating lines. And they know, and they knew 5 years ago in 2011, when we had state representatives here in Texas trying to stop the groping of our children by the TSA. They knew at the time, and they published it in their documents, we mentioned this last night, that there was no threat against airplanes or airports. And they said, why then are we doing this? I said, well, that's a good question. They redacted that out of a lawsuit from an engineer who was pointing out that their procedures didn't work. And this is a guy, Jonathan Corbett. We've had him on multiple times. He pointed out that their naked body scanners could not detect weapons if you put them in certain areas on your body. So the whole thing is theater. So it's very fitting that they would have clowns and rainbow ponies.
I didn't see any down there. That was my experience down there. It was only the other thing that stood out to me is that there wasn't any segmentation between first class and normal coach seating and any of the airport security I recognized down there. They treated everybody the same.
Well, that may have been a function of the airport, the airline that you were traveling on. I know there's some airlines like here, Southwest doesn't have different classes of seating. But tell us, you went to see the Mexican president at one of the events he was speaking. Tell us what security was like there.
I did. It was different. The first thing you noticed was there was a bunch of guys standing around with machine guns. Not here in the United States, you often see people with dogs and on leashes, and they're texting on their cell phones while they stand there with the dog. And I found, it was unsettling the first time I saw it. I found that kind of after a period of time to be a little bit more effective in my view. It just seemed. It was an unusual sight to me as an American citizen. To them, it's obviously something they use as a deterrent, and I'd say that's a pretty strong deterrent to see a bunch of guys standing in front of you with machine guns.
Yeah, it does act as a deterrent. I know one thing that really gets the government upset is if people show up at rallies exercising their First Amendment rights and exercising their Second Amendment rights to carry weapons. So there's a lot of people in America that don't think that anyone other than somebody in a uniform should be seen carrying a gun, and that's the flip side of that. And we've had reporters, Richard Reeves has gone to numerous events to cover the primaries, Donald Trump and other candidates. And the problem that we run into there, he lost his car keys because the Secret Service has everybody empty out their belongings and then just shuffles through it. That they don't have any containers, and they just shove it en masse down to the end of the table. And everybody that gets through security is left there trying to sort through their personal belongings. And he lost an expensive car key that way. So yeah, security issues like that it's hard to say what the best way to do those things are. But certainly, I think the thing that I come away with, David, is that there doesn't seem to be any concern, just as I pointed out, what the Secret Service is doing by putting everybody's belongings together, just what we see the TSA doing, saying, well, it's not our problem, it's your problem. There doesn't seem to be any concern on the American side as to how they treat Americans. They seem to be content to treat us like dirt, even though there is no reason for many of their procedures. What do you think?
And that's exactly why I reached out to you with this example. Is I think looking at a best practice and a good experience, and asking all of your listeners to the nightly news and other programs that you might share this conversation on, remind people, hey, it's about the action you take. If you contact your congressperson and senator and send a copy of this video interview and say, hey, you know what? I deserve to be treated as well as the people flying in an airport in Mexico. And don't send them an email.
Yeah,
actually
I agree.
Call them afterwards and request a meeting. They're your elected representatives. Remind them that.
And I would agree. And I would even add, David, we might say, you know what? I deserve to be treated with the respect that the Constitution demands. Because, we have a right to not be unreasonably searched, to not be treated as if we are citizens in a Nazi-occupied country. And that's the thing that concerns me, because it's not just Mexico, as I pointed out. It was everybody that was flying anywhere in the world out of Hong Kong except the people going to America. It was only the Americans that they singled out for this kind of abuse, when we have a constitution that says the government will not do that. And so that's the thing that I'm really concerned about. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us, David Dalka. Appreciate it.
Great to be with you. Talk to you later, David.
Thank you. And of course, the key thing, folks, is that if we give up our freedom, if we give up our dignity for the promise of security, we'll lose everything, including our security. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
There's a very important question that needs to be answered. Will humanity survive? And to look at that threat, we have to ask another question. What is the number one obstacle to human beings and our species surviving and becoming a type 1 civilization that isn't just dependent on this planet? You could say that it's changes in the heavens, suns going supernova, tectonic earthquake and volcano events, nuclear weapons, genetic engineering. But if you look at the race, the acceleration of technological development, I think the biggest threat overall is humanity not pacing ourselves and merging with artificial intelligence. So they're trying to end humanity as if it's a good thing and create this new species. Talk about mad scientists. And there have been several new articles on this just the last few weeks. DARPA is testing implantable chips in soldiers' brains is one of them. Another just came out in mid-April. Rich Americans seeks black market brain implants in bid to plug into artificial intelligence matrix. And they're going to go through the dangerous surgeries of being hooked up, not just with a few wires, but with thousands of connections total, to the brain, to an AI computer to try to merge consciousness. My father, a physician, recently went back to continuing education, part of keeping his medical license, and he brought me back some of the literature they gave them. This was from the state medical boards right here in Texas, that soon you'll have to have a DNA chip to get a prescription. Not just that chips are going to be on the pills and medicines themselves, but now you're going to have to give your blood, basically every time, a tiny prick, into a DNA chip database that tracks everything going on in your body as well as your genes. In this short report, we're only scratching the surface. And the big issue here is things they denied 20, 30 years ago that were going on, they're now admitting today. What are they doing that we don't know about? We need to have a debate about our species. We need to understand that the global elite have decided we're obsolete and are moving towards a robotic future where there's no place for humanity, as Bill Joy wrote over 15 years ago for Wired Magazine in his article, Why the Future Doesn't Need Us. And the numbers are in. Screen time, all the television, all the prescription drugs. This modern culture is killing us. Our IQs are dropping. People are becoming more and more ignorant. Society is unraveling and falling apart. So we know that the fruits of this high-tech poison tree are literally killing us. The answer is getting back to healthy living, gardening, spending time with our families, less screen time, and also using compounds that Mother Nature has produced that are known to boost our natural abilities. Humans have built an incredible world. We can change our environment. We do have that magic spark. But the elite think we're ugly and bad and have decided it's time that humans be thrown on the ash heap of history. We have taken some of the compounds that Mother Nature has produced and gotten the cleanest, purest sources of it and put it together in BrainForce, one of the most highly reviewed nootropic brain boosters on the market today that has an incredibly affordable price. Check out BrainForce today and other game-changing compounds like X2 Survival Shield at InfoWarsLife.com. Again, that's InfoWarsLife.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139.